Hey guys, it's Raisins, and making a quick video that was requested in the comments of one of my other videos about keybinds and settings. So I thought I'd make this really quick, about 10 minutes, and go through my keybinds and what I think are personal preference and then what I think are mandatory. It's going to be really simple. I'm not going to keep you too long, so I'll just show you what I use first, and then I'll go over the settings which I think everyone should have kind of by default. So what I use is I use quick cast with indicator. So as you can see, there's nothing actually set here. So if I go into abilities and summoner spells, all of my spells are quick cast with indicator. That you get that setting by ticking this little box here. And it's pretty straightforward what that does. When I press my Q key here, I get a little range indicator, okay? And I can just release the Q key and it throws my hook out. And I can do this for any of my spells. It doesn't work for certain spells. For example, if I press R, it cannot be, there's no range indicator for R, so it automatically works like it's exactly like it's smart cast. So it's exactly the same as if it was smart cast. If you're using normal cast, what these spells will do is pretty straightforward. Instead of releasing, as I release, I throw the hook. Instead of releasing, you have to actually click with your mouse. So it adds an extra click. I personally think that's just unnecessary. I don't think anyone should really use normal cast. You either use quick cast with indicator or smart cast. But it's kind of personal preference on a lot of situations. There are certain champs which I would always recommend quick cast with indicator. Rumble ult, quick cast with indicator is generally like a lot easier to use as ult or aim as ult. I think stuff like hooks, you can kind of get an. I mean, you can obviously work off of feel, and a lot of players do that. But I mean, for me, it's just much better and much easier to play like this. It doesn't take much time to just tap hook if I want to throw it out instantly, and it's also it's also much easier if I want to aim it over long distance. So that's my skills. I do have level up on shift instead of control, so I do shift QWER. That's just personal preference. Again, I prefer to have my pinky on shift instead of my pinky on control, or moving my pinky to level up. And then for items, again, I personally think this one is kind of mandatory. I think trinkets should almost always be on quick cast with indicator. And the reason I think that is if you put your trinket on quick cast only, like if I just switch this to quick cast only, as you can see, I don't actually get the range indicator. So my character is going to walk all the way to where I want to place it. Whereas if I actually put the trinket on normally, I'm going to get my range indicator. And that helps, if you guys watch my warding video, that helps a lot with this kind of stuff. You really should have the range indicators on for your wards. For your other items, maybe not that necessary. It's not mandatory. But I definitely think trinket should be. And I have them, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and then 5, 6, 7 on my items and 4 on trinket. Again, this is all personal preference. I don't think that where you put your items matter as long as you know where they are. For player movement, I think I have everything on default. I don't believe I've changed anything. What I use the most is attack move, which is A. So if I hold A here, I get a little range indicator, and I can attack anything in this range. So, I can attack this cannon. But what I cannot do is attack this. But if I click this, I will walk there, and I will attack the closest thing to my cursor. That's the important difference here. Whereas if you go into the settings and you see this setting, player attack move click, if you shift mouse button, it will attack the closest thing to your character. Okay, so attack move is a lot more precise. But you can use shift move click if you want to orb walk and say, for example, you're running away from this minion. I can attack, and as you can see, I don't have to move my mouse, right? But if I'm moving away from this minion, this is closest to me, and I want to attack this minion, I have to attack move, okay? Because if I shift move, I will attack the closest minion. So there's also an option to toggle the player attack only click. I believe, or set that to a key, and I believe that's kind of, you only hit champions even if there's minions nearby. I don't really use that a lot. I just use A click. For the camera controls, I have pretty weird setup. I have control Q, W, E, R. Normally they're the level up, but that's what I use to F key. My F keys on my keyboard are a little far away, so I rebound them. Again, this is all personal preference. As long as you can F key, it doesn't really matter. And I have space as the default, which just goes straight back to my champion. So the most important keybind for the communication tab is this one, areas warded. It's pretty straightforward. It's not bound by default, so just bind it to something. I have it bound to F1, which I have remapped to my mouse. And yeah, just bind it. You're going to use this ping a ridiculous amount. It is incredibly strong. It is one of the most requested pings for a very long time, and thank God they eventually added it because, this is my most used ping by a mile. Apart from that, the hotkeys, I don't have anything else off of default. I think they're all relatively, minor hotkeys, so you don't really need to change anything. There are a couple things in the other menus, which I'll just go through, that I personally think everybody should try out at least, and they'll give you a little bit more flexibility in your gameplay. So let's do that. So in the video, again, all these settings, I think hide eye candy is just generally useful, and I also think the lower the effects and quality you guys can set, the better. It helps visual clarity, but it's really like personal preference. If you really want to play on very high, you can play on very high. It's not gonna like break anything. I think get rid of screen shake. Just don't use screen shake. In my opinion, it's just bad. It's gonna mess you up when you're in the middle of a fight and like your screen is shaking. But I think hide eye candy is definitely a setting you could pop on and see if it helps you a little bit. It gets rid of a few of the like little moving parts and random stuff in River. So if you're trying to be like super competitive player, it'll help distract you as little as possible. There's nothing really in the sound tab, so we'll just hop over to the interface tab. In my opinion, I think minimap scale, you should just set to whatever is good for your monitor. It really depends on the size of your monitor, and it's important that your minimap is comfortable for you to keep looking at. So that's, again, this is a personal preference. Try and figure out what size your eyes are drawn to, but also doesn't block too much of your screen. Because I go up to minimap, this size is just way too big. It's blocking too much of my screen. So I can keep it to around 33, and I could see everything kind of clearly. But there's people who have it much higher or much lower. And all the other scales, again, personal preference, death recap, practice tool, all this kind of stuff. It's totally up to you. I think the health and resource bars, I don't know how you can play League of Legends without them, so please have that on. If you don't have that on, what are you doing? So yeah, definitely have that on. Also, two optional settings you can have are screen flash on damage and screen flash on loss of control. Again, that's totally up to you. I just don't like the kind of like epileptic screen flashing. It kind of it's just jarring. It's really jarring in the middle of a game. I can keep an eye on the minimap and keep an eye on my champion well enough that I don't need them. But having said that, I know there's a couple of reasons why you'd want to keep them on. Like, you're pathing somewhere and then you get tagged by a spell. You'd probably want to keep screen flash on damage on, for example. If you're randomly getting damaged out of nowhere when you're in the middle of nowhere, it can be useful sometimes. So, just make sure it's whatever you prefer. The next setting is actually a setting that goes with the quick cast with indicator hotkeys setting, which is enable line missout display. So with this on, as I showed you, my Q just looks like a line. With it off, my Q no longer looks like a line. It has the maximum range of my Q, but it's actually just a giant circle. So there's no longer like a little line that shows you exactly where I'm going to place my Q. I personally really prefer it to have it on so that I can, kind of line up things if needed. If I'm chilling in a bush and I'm about to hook somebody, I think the circle is far less useful than the actual line. But again, that's personal preference. Another setting which I think is really personal preference, but is important for you guys to figure out what you prefer, is show attack range. So as I said, if I hold A, I get a little circle around me and I can attack anything in that circle. And then if I click, I will attack move to that location and hit the closest thing to my cursor. Now, if I remove a show attack range, what that does is that just removes the circle completely from me. So, I will not, like, if I'm out of range here, and, personally, I don't think it's that intrusive, and I like it. I like the setting, so I keep it on. But, if you really, really don't like the circle, then remove that setting. All this kind of stuff is personal preference. Show spell costs, what do you want your abilities to display in minutes plus seconds. That's all personal preference. Minimap, show neutral camps. Just have this on. Do not have this off. I don't think anybody has this off, though. You'd have to be crazy to have that off. And show minimap on the left is pretty obvious. If you like it on the left, then you like it on the left. So this part is, in my opinion, a mandatory one, which is allow minimap movement. I think not being able to click and move on the minimap is super annoying. I could be looking somewhere and be going somewhere else, and that's just a multitasking heaven, God sent. It's great. You need this. You need this setting. If you disable it, what it does is mean you can't actually click on the minimap to move anywhere. So keep that enabled. It's really useful. And get used to, clicking on the minimap when you want to go long distances. Otherwise, you'll be sitting here like constantly having to stare at your character when you want to move somewhere. Or you'd have to manually click on the minimap and then click there. And it's just an extra added effort. Okay, so there's a couple of settings here which I'm just going to suggest. They are not mandatory, but I personally think they will help improve your League of Legends mental. And those are show summoner names, toggle that off. I think showing summoner names just makes you... sometimes it can just annoy you if you're playing with the same people, or you have somebody flaming in chat and you have to look at his summoner name the whole game, just turn it off. It's not really going to change the game for you, but it'll help you focus more on the champions and what they do rather than the people. And then show all chat, show ally chat. I keep show ally chat on always because I time sum sometimes, and that is important. You need this on to time sums. But I think show all chat is definitely one you can turn off. If you find yourself ever reacting to things in all chat or getting tilted or getting annoyed or typing in any way that isn't productive to the game, just turn that one off immediately. Don't even think about it, just turn it off. Take my advice, save yourself the stress and the mental effort of having an argument with people in chat. And you can also, I believe by default, the mana text is off, and maybe the experience text. I'm not 100% sure. But I personally like to have the experience text on. And the reason I like to have that on is especially if you're like, early game in bot lane, you're getting zoned from minions. Knowing when, I mean, you can look at this little bar here, but knowing when you get XP is useful. As you can see, the little 60 XP pops up there. And if I hit one more minion, you can see I get 60 XP for that. So if I'm like at the edge of minion range, I can just, confirm without having to look at my XP bar, whether I got the XP for that minion or not. Last few settings are mostly personal preference. Camera move speed, that's pretty straightforward. Figure out your DPI and what you're comfortable with and change it to that. Move camera on revive can be changed. You can disable that off or on. The main thing is per side offset, the camera lock mode here. So fixed offset is fixed centering your champion. Every time you hold spacebar or you flick to your champion, it will center your champion on the screen, no matter what side you're on, whether you're on red side or blue side. Whereas per side offset, what per side offset does is, as you can see, when I'm pressing spacebar, it actually does not center the camera with my champion in the middle, right? It's not putting my champion directly in the center of the screen. The reason is I'm blue side, and right now it's thinking I want to see more of the right side of the map when I'm in lane. So as you can see, I have more vision in the kind of upper right side of my screen. Whereas if I go back to fixed offset, it's in the center. So this is kind of personal preference. I play with with per side offset, sorry. But you can play with whatever setting you find, but you do need to understand the differences between them because, again, in my opinion, for junglers, like per side offset doesn't really have that many benefits, right? You could probably put it in the center and you get more vision all around you. But it's totally up to you. Just experiment, figure out what you like. And another setting that is important is the gameplay attack move on cursor setting, which again, if I disable this and I attack move, it will actually disable the attack the closest thing to my cursor, and instead, as you can see, instead it is attacking the closest thing to my champion. However, there is an exception, which is if you hover over, as you can see, the little minions highlight red when I'm hovering directly over them. It will bypass this and it will attack that target. But if you, if I do this and I'm not hitting the minion, then it's attacking the closest. Attack move on cursor, this one is a big one, especially for champions which need to kite. Really important setting that you get right and you become comfortable with. So I hope that was useful. There's one more thing, which is your summoner spells. You can quick cast your summoner spells if you want. But again, that's totally up to you. I have my summoner spells on quick cast with indicator. As you can see, if I hold over ignite, again, same thing. I can kind of like see the range on this. I personally think it's not that useful because I'm not going to be sitting there going, am I in range for ignite? I'm probably just going to be spamming the button trying to get ignite off ASAP and then move on to more important spells. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, and I stream on Twitch. And you can also drop in the comments if you want to see any other videos like this, really short videos. I can make them about a bunch of topics, but I have a wave management video that I'm working on and it will probably come out in the next day or two. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys.